Yay Media Group.
A quick note before we dive into today's podcast. If you like what you hear, I would love for you to subscribe to Fueled Wellness and Nutrition, wherever you download your podcast. It would also be incredible if you take a minute to rate and review this podcast. Those things do matter and they really help us. I'm Molly Kimball. Welcome to Fueled, a wellness and nutrition podcast. I'm a registered dietitian and nutrition journalist with a passion to help people live their strongest, healthiest life possible. In my weekly TV segments and columns, there's a limited amount of time and space to cover everything, but there's so much more to share. This podcast is my opportunity to dive deeper into the topics you want to know about. So many of us have different wellness goals. Those of y'all listening to this podcast, y'all are coming into this, listening to this, and each of us is coming from a different space in terms of, maybe that one or two or more things that we want to improve wellness wise. It might be something that we're training for, a performance related event. It might be our glucose levels. It might be a weight related or body composition related goal. Whatever these goals are, they're so individual for each of us. There's one that is sort of a overarching, I would say, that almost all of us, it feels elusive at times, and that's energy. And that's one of those questions that I get all the time. What can I do? What can I take for more energy? Some people refer to it as a brain fog that they have. They're looking for that mental clarity, the physical energy, but also mental energy. So that's what we're talking about today is certain supplements and products that have been shown to have this benefit. It's something that I've been exploring, I've been looking at, and I've been trying these products as well and supplementing with some of these on my own for several years now. And I thought, hey, why not dive even a little bit deeper, understand the science a little bit deeper, and bring someone in who's an expert on this topic to walk us through these. So we're joined today by Dr. Rebecca Cruz. Rebecca is the research director at Renew by Science. And Renew by Science is the company that I actually purchased these products from that we're going to be talking about today. They're not sponsoring this podcast. There's no financial anything there. And I just really like the company. I really like the products. And when I saw that they have Rebecca Cruz, a PhD on staff, I thought, wow, I would really love to talk with her. And so lucky us, she said yes. So she's the research director at Renew by Science. She leads their company's engagement in transformative research. Rebecca holds a PhD in biochemical and molecular nutrition from Tufts University. She has over a decade of nutrition science research experience. She's explored so many different dimensions of human well-being in both academic settings and in government laboratories. So welcome, Rebecca.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
So one of the things that you've also, we should mention, you've got, I believe it's about 7 published papers.
Yeah, something like that.
And one of the things that, you're in the space now with a company like Renew by Science, but also being in the academic space, being in the government space. And one of the things that kind of in all these areas, you've seen that having the industry participation, industry being like a Renew by Science, having industry participation in research, it's key for helping to drive the knowledge, the learning that we're having in as far as supplements and other types of well-being go.
Correct. Yeah, that was kind of my motivation in getting into the wellness industry. There's such an opportunity there. But first, whenever being in the academic and government area, in that area, studying nutrition science, as you know very well, you can see how that science and what we know gets portrayed to everybody else in terms of products and information. And there's a huge discrepancy. So I kind of saw that opportunity and wanted to move into industry, but there's a huge opportunity for research with companies that are selling the product and universities that are researching NAD, and then consumers who want to know what it means, what the NAD level means for them. So there's a lot of opportunity to involve everyone and just have this big collaboration for us all to get a better, clear idea about what NAD is doing and what we're selling to people, what they're taking. So overall, it's just a good way to go about it.
And it's sort of, I teed up this introduction without leaving it sort of a mystery. Like, here's a supplement that can help with energy, but I didn't say yet what it is. So for our listeners, we're talking about several things y'all are going to hear us using acronyms essentially for. And so NAD that you heard Rebecca talk about, we're going to really dive into that. So NAD stands for nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide, but just call
Correct.
it NAD. And this is something that, well, it's really, it's sort of the elusive compound in our bodies. And so we'll talk about that in terms of how NAD relates to aging and a lot of the downfalls that people may associate with aging. And then the two supplements that we're going to be talking about, we'll be spending most of our time talking about NMN. So NMN, and this is nicotinamide mononucleotide. This is the supplement that I've been taking for quite a while now. And we'll also talk about another one called NR. And these are both precursors to that NAD. So we'll say them again a few times, but just know that NAD is a compound in our body that it declines with age. And these other two products, NMN and NR, are the precursors that we take in supplement form to help boost those NAD levels. So we'll come back to that in just a minute. I want to hear a little bit more, Rebecca, about your role with Renew. And then even before that, am I right that you worked in the Air Force Research Lab?
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to hear a little
So
bit about those.
sure, yeah. After my time at Tufts studying biochemical molecular nutrition, I did a fellowship with the Air Force Research Lab studying human performance. So we were looking at different protocols for human performance, basically, and then looking at different wearables to figure out how heart rate variability we could use as a metric to measure how the protocol's working and things of that nature. So we're basically looking at how to evaluate human performance in airmen and women. So it was a very interesting experience to be working with them. It's a great lab. So it was a lot of fun. And then at Renew by Science, I was very excited to talk to them because they kind of had that same vision of collaborating, so that Renew can learn exactly what these products are doing and then collaborating, contributing to the academic world. And so having that data being shared and transparent and showing exactly what is going on, they had that same vision. So at Renew, I look for other collaborators, other different labs that could use our product in research. And then we share that data. And so that's the bulk of what I do is collaborating with other labs, basically.
That's really fun. I mean, that's got to be. I would think that there would be a lot of challenges for almost working with somebody from afar and upholding what you have ideas for maybe in research and like how they're able to implement it. But I would think that with doing that, there's so much more that the company is able to study by sort of outsourcing it to these labs that might specialize in different areas. So I would imagine y'all might work with labs specifically on sleep or exercise performance or recovery and different labs that might specialize in
Right.
different aspects of our wellness.
Yes, and I find that to be one of the most interesting parts. So, for instance, we have a collaboration with one lab that studies glaucoma. And so for that one, it's actually about the delivery system that I was interested in. But because of the way it worked out, I'm able to look at glaucoma as well. And I'm working with somebody that specializes with the mitochondria and aging. So I get to talk to a lot of people and get expertise from all over the place. So it is very interesting. It's very cool.
And when we look at, the reason why someone may be interested in these products, we talked about it just a bit ago, is, the energy, that mental clarity, these are going to be some of the benefits that are to be expected that we'll be talking about. But when we talk about too, like the, mitigating the effects of aging, as I was pulling up just data and, researching a bit for our conversation, I saw a few notes on life expectancy and how many of us are 65 or older. And just a couple of years ago, there was about 700 million people over 65. And in 2050, that's expected to be 1,500 million. So basically doubling, in 25 years, the population over 65 will be doubling. And when we look at, okay, I think we now see, I'm 49. And so I think about when I was a kid, people who were 49 seemed so old, And I think we now have so many really amazing role models for what healthy aging can be. And it's not just the
Mhm.
anomaly that you've got, we do have a 94-year-old down the street who's like one of the healthiest guys, and he walks every day, and he's got like his gait, his pace, he looks like he's like in his 50s and not 94. And he is, I would say, an anomaly, but there's so many, whether we're looking at, you know, celebrities that we may not even know in person, but we see them from afar, even what they're looking like and behaving like and the things that they're doing with, physically and the ways that they're challenging their bodies. But in our everyday worlds, I think we can all think of people that are right next to us that we have, just in our neighborhoods alongside of us that, wow, it's just a really different conversation. So it makes sense that companies like Renew by Science are like, hey, we want to provide these products that can really help, as people are getting older and as they have higher expectations of what that quality of life is, so that
Mhm.
considering different supplements like this can really help. It can help move the needle a bit in how we're feeling. So give us a little bit of a biology debriefing. So when we're talking about NAD
Sure.
being that compound in the body that's so connected to aging or energy, talk to us about what is NAD.
Sure. So NAD is an incredibly important molecule. It's found in all of our cells. And so its most important function is with energy production. So NAD helps convert the nutrients in our food into usable energy for our cells to function properly. And this is absolutely essential for cell vitality. Without NAD in this role, everything would stop. So that's its primary, most important one that it's been known for a while. But it also has this other function in the repair and maintenance of the cell. So it's required by these proteins that kind of go around and do housekeeping around the cell. So when DNA needs to be repaired, they're there, and they regulate inflammation. They make sure the mitochondria is healthy. So NAD in this role and with the energy production, it's kind of central to all of these processes that are keeping the cell healthy and functioning. So as you mentioned, as you age, the levels of NAD start to decline. And it's actually pretty dramatic. So by mid-age, you have about half of the NAD that you had when you were younger. And so this is caused by a couple things. So just with age, more damage just starts to accumulate just because you're exposed to more inflammation and UV, things like that. So more NAD is being consumed in these processes to keep up and repair these cells. But at the same time, as you age, your cells actually get less efficient at producing NAD. So there's an enzyme in the synthesis pathway for NAD that actually declines with age as well. So at the same time, you have more NAD being used in these repair mechanisms. You also have less being produced. So there's an overall decline, and that generally manifests as what you think of as the aging process and age-related diseases like cardiovascular disease and cognitive decline, things like that, because the cells just aren't able to function and restore themselves as they once could.
So super critical, like you said, NAD is found in every single cell in our bodies. It is it's a key element for keeping our cells healthy, building and contributing to all the different components of those healthy cells. We make less of it as we age, but then our bodies are also like trying to churn more out to like repair all the damages that are happening. Like you said, UV, oxidative stress, inflammation. Talk to us about the role. One of the things that you read about a lot in the role of NAD in the body is mitochondrial regeneration. Talk to us about what our mitochondria do and why it's so important, and kind of the role that NAD has with that.
Sure. So mitochondria are the powerhouse of the cell. So they're what keeps the cell running. They're really important. They can also be a source of oxidative stress. So they're incredibly important, but they can become dysfunctional with age and cause a lot of oxidative stress. And so NAD, whenever NAD gets those, whenever I mentioned that it helps convert that energy from food into energy that the cells can use, NAD turns into NADH and it goes to the mitochondria and donates those electrons. And it's part of the process of making ATP, which is the primary energy source in the cell. And so it's incredibly important for that piece for the energy production, but also in that other role, one of the proteins that is responsible for the housekeeping in the cell, keeping the mitochondria healthy, is the sirtuins. So sirtuins are, they're kind of well known, I think. So they are like the guardians of the genome. They are kind of known as the longevity proteins, and they are important for mitochondrial biogenesis, making sure that's healthy, that there's more mitochondria, that it's healthy, things like that.
And so when our NAD is declining, all of those things start to suffer.
Yes.
And it's possible, though, to reverse some of this by increasing our levels of NAD. But it's not the best approach is not to supplement with NAD. So, I think someone would hear this and be like, well, how can I take that? But something like NAD is not something that's really an effective supplement. And tell us why.
Sure. So NAD is actually a big molecule. And so what the big issue is that you want more NAD inside the cell. So by supplementation, you want to get it inside the cell, but it's not going to cross the cell membrane to get inside. So the idea is that the precursors, NMN and R, they're basically the building blocks of NAD, and they're smaller and can actually get into the cell where they can be used to synthesize NAD. So was that your question?
Yeah, right.
Okay. So I get lost talking about the pathways. But yeah, so basically, you can't really supplement with NAD to get inside the cell itself because it'll stay outside.
And historically, there was a time when people were supplementing with NAD, not realizing that, or am I wrong on that?
Yes. So whenever it was realized that NAD declines with age, the first idea was like, well, let's take NADs. But there's this problem of NAD not getting into the cell, but it also gets broken down really quickly in the gut. So there's several issues of getting NAD there, and you'll find with all of NAD therapy, that's the biggest issue is bioavailability, is getting it into the cell so that inside the cell there's more NAD. And right now, the most effective way to do that is by supplementing with the precursors, the smaller ones that will get into the cell, NMN and NR.
So when you'll see products, they may be referred to as NAD boosters or NAD restoration. We should also mention when you see NAD, it'll have a plus sign at the end of it. And so if you see that, we're talking about the same thing. We're just saying NAD, but you'll often see it as like NAD with a little plus. So these the boosters or the restoration products that you might see are not really going to be the NAD, but then instead the precursors that Rebecca talked about. Let's get into the NMN, and I keep pausing as I say it because I know that I'm going to say eminent. Now, I can't even say M&Ms. But NMN, nicotinamide mononucleotide. But for simplicity's sake, we'll just say NMN. And talk to us about the research on this and the anti-aging benefits linked to NMN.
Sure. So NMN, there have been many clinical trials done with NMN, and so it consistently boosts NAD levels up to 40 to 60%. And well, it's known for, I guess, the big claim and the flashy version is that it extends, or its longevity, it extends lifespan, but it's really about healthspan and, preventing chronic disease, disability, keeping the cells healthy. And so you'll see in a lot of trials, it's improved insulin sensitivity, even muscle insulin sensitivity, which is great for metabolic health. It has improved cardiometabolic health, so blood pressure, arterial stiffness. It has improved sleep and quality of life. and exercise performance at higher doses with it's improved exercise endurance in trained athletes, but it also improves endurance in older adults as well. There was one study that showed that it lengthened telomeres, which is the protective cap on DNA that typically shortens with age. So lengthening that was very exciting. It was one very small study. And then I think that's a lot of it. Daytime function was a big one as well. And yeah, mood.
Like
It has
alertness,
improved.
focus, clarity.
Mhm.
When you say daytime function, yeah. The mental benefits, the physical benefits, benefiting again that mental clarity, but also our insulin sensitivity, which for someone who struggles with glucose control, those things are all going to be a tremendous benefit. And so the NMN is a recognized precursor to NAD, which we've been talking about. And then, but so all of those things that are associated with that aging decline that we see with the drop in NAD, supplementing with NMN can help to mitigate or buffer and potentially reverse, if not reverse, then at least slow the effects that someone might
Mhm.
experience otherwise with that drop in NAD. Um, what about so the main thing is going to be supplementing with it, and the supplement that I have from Renew by Science is the powdered supplement that you and the recommendation for it is, I believe, like sublingual, like under your tongue. There's little tablets that can dissolve into there, or there's the powder. So I have the powder. Talk to us about that. You know, the why sublingual would be the recommendation for a lot of these, or there's even um, the transdermal through our skin. Talk to us about the different types of ways that we could get NMN.
Sure. So the like I said, the main issue is bioavailability. So you want to get the actual molecule that hasn't been metabolized into anything else that can happen in the gut or the liver into the bloodstream. So with sublingual, rather than it going through the stomach and the intestines and the liver to be processed before getting to the cells, it goes through the capillaries under your tongue straight into the bloodstream. So there's no metabolism. And so these do get maxed out at a certain point, and so you'll swallow the rest, and some will still get metabolized. But that initial part that gets absorbed into the capillaries gets absorbed directly into the bloodstream. Similarly with the transdermal patch, there it goes through the skin into the bloodstream, and so that's another way to get it into the system without having it metabolized in the gut. What's going on?
How much, and you're right, like there's only, whenever I use it, I try to do it sublingually. And my mouth is like watering right now, like back in my cheeks as I'm even thinking about it, because it has a tartness to it. And so it can be like, whew, it's like a lot right there.
Mhm.
Like, and so having it all stay under your tongue can be, it's almost like a little bit of a challenge, you know, at least for me. And so,
Yeah.
so I do find that there's a bit of that, but then the other, just with like the natural saliva production that's, you know, revving up as you're doing this, you do end up just sort of swallowing it. So how effective is it for that, for the powdered product or the powdered NMN that is through Renew, to stir it into a drink versus the other ways that we would do it orally, trying it under your tongue? And is it a
So it'll be more effective if you do it sublingually. That'll be more effective than in a drink. So so the thing is, you'll still get effects if you just swallow it. But you'll get more of the NMN into your system using the sublingual. So whatever goes directly to the bloodstream won't be modified by the gut, but whatever you swallow, unless it's liposomal, which we can talk about later, but if it's just the raw powder, it'll be metabolized. So you'll get more from sublingual, but the other will still be effective, just not quite as much.
I guess let's talk about that right now. Talk to us about the liposomal delivery, and then also the transdermal. Is transdermal? Is there like a cream or a gel, or is it a patch or all?
So there's different transdermal patches. We don't have the patch, but some of them are, it's like a low grade electrode. So like you mentioned, that positive charge on NAD, you put it on with also the patch will be positively charged. And so when you turn it on, it's going to push that NAD out and through your skin. And so and you can do it you can do it at a low level so you can get more throughout the day. So theoretically, it could be a really great option. There's not any data on it, unfortunately, but I think it's a really promising option. There was some concern that such a big molecule actually gets through the skin, but it seems like it might. But there needs to be a little more research on that to see. And but it looks promising. But yeah, it's that charge that's getting pushed through.
Got it. Okay. And then the liposomal delivery when we see that on a product.
Sure. So the liposomal, basically the NMN or NR is encapsulated in these tiny vesicles. So it's still going to look like a normal pill, but the actual compounds are protected in this lipid bubble. So it's going to make it through the stomach, the intestine, and the liver without being modified by any enzymes in those organs. So you actually get 90% of the compounds delivered to the bloodstream still intact, which is going to be the most effective out of all of them. I think sublingual is something like 30 to 40%. And then IV obviously is 100%. That's the reference point, is putting it directly into your bloodstream. So liposomal will give you 90 just because it's protected all the way through. And then sublingual.
And looking at the Renew by Science website, there's the powder, which is what I mentioned that I'm taking, which is just it's like the pure NMN powder. And then on the liposomal, there's a gel, and similarly, you would put that gel sublingually.
Yes.
And
So yeah, that one's ideal as well. So it's liposomal and under the tongue.
Okay. And then, or there's the capsules that are the liposomal. What do you take? Which do you take?
I take the liposomal. I also do the liposomal gel for vitamin D and K because we have that. I enjoy that one, and I think it's really effective because then you get it under the tongue, and then whatever you swallow is liposomal. So it seems to be really effective.
So you
And then
do the liposomal
rest,
capsules and then the gel. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, I've got a lot of the powder, but I may switch to.
No, I was thinking about doing the powder as well. I am committed right now. I'm kind of in a study in N of one for a different thing I'm doing. So I'm committed to that right now, but I'm going to test. I'm always testing things. So I think I was going to do the powder too with the sublingual.
And when we're looking at, okay, when we take it, what is the best time of day for someone to add something like NMN?
So really, whenever is best for you. I don't think the data is strong enough to say one way or another. There is one study that showed nighttime NMN, or excuse me, afternoon NMN was good for sleep quality, fatigue, and exercise endurance. So they compared AM versus PM. It was one study, so I think it's more important for you to be consistent. So whenever it's going to work for you, but the one study that tested the time of day did show that PM was a little more effective.
And how long does someone need to take it before? Well, I have so many questions that are all trying to jump out at one time. When someone is supplementing with NMN, what are the things for them to tune into or pay attention to? You know how I was always like, is this working? And so of course, being consistent is going to be key, but how long will someone need to take it before they notice a benefit? And what would be the benefits for them to tune into to see if this is effective for them, taking NMN?
Sure. So I would kind of take notes on your energy levels, maybe in the afternoon, well, throughout the day. So it should be more of a sustained energy, and just to see how your mental fatigue is doing as you are working. And if you're taking sublingual, you might have that burst of energy in the morning as well. And then pay attention to how you're sleeping. A lot of people, if you're a runner or whatever you do in your workout, if there's any sort of pains or anything, sometimes you can notice a shift in how you're functioning in that sense. And then I feel like overall mood is a good one as well. You can see in studies that quality of life does improve as well, and that has a lot to do with mood. But I think the most noticeable one to look out for is energy throughout the day.
Energy
And
slash that clarity. Yeah.
yes, yes.
How long does that affect? Like, so if someone is using the powder, like we talked about, or the sublingual, how long does that continue? Like, would it be beneficial for someone if they said, okay, I'm going to do this first thing in the morning, but then that person who may have an afternoon slump, would it make sense for them to do 2 doses a day or split their dose?
Yes, you can do that. So that if you're doing powder, that's definitely an option if you're getting tired in the afternoon. For testing a dose, I might give it 2 weeks, probably is when you'll see if it's liposomal for sustained energy. I think maybe 2 weeks. And if not, I would change something up. But with something like powder, you can switch it up to multiple times a day or things like that.
And what's the typical dose that you recommend for NMN?
So to start, it's typically anywhere from 250 to 1200 kind of to start with. It depends on the person. So if you want to, I would start at probably 500.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, anywhere from 300 to 500 to start with would be good.
Up to 1200 is what's been used in studies more. What about any safety considerations or drawbacks of taking too much? It seems pretty benign, but what are any safety considerations for us?
So there haven't been really many issues up to 2000 to 3000. So you can take really high doses. Up to 1200 is just pretty common.
Okay.
Some people find there's some reports of nausea and maybe headaches, but there's really not any reported side effects in studies even, but just sometimes nausea, sometimes headache.
So 250 to 500 would be the low end. So starting with something like 500 daily, and then you could work your way up to 1,000, 1,200. And even if someone did 2,000 or 3,000 a day. So if you did do the powder that we're talking about that I do, and you do it first thing in the morning, or you do the gel in the morning and you do the powder in the afternoon, or any of those, like adding in that extra dose in a day, if someone does feel like it kind of gets them over that hump on the brain fog or mental clarity, is not something that we need to be cautious about doing. Is it possible, like if someone is like, well, but do I need it? Is it possible for us to measure and check our own NAD levels?
Yes, there are at-home test kits that you can use to check your NAD levels, which I think if you can, and if you're interested, I think it's really important to do that so you don't have to guess the
Right.
dose. Like I was saying, the range is quite wide, what I was mentioning that people take. But what you can do is test your baseline and then see how you respond to a supplement. And so you get a better idea of what exactly you need. So, because you don't want to waste your money, but you also want to be raising your NAD levels. And it really depends on the person. And as more research is coming out, there are very different responses per person between individuals and how people respond. So you may have a 10 or 15% boost, while another person would have a 40% boost. And so it really depends on the person. So if you can test, it's definitely recommended.
What's the normal range of NAD levels if someone were testing it?
So you want to aim for above 40. A lot of times it'll drop into 20s in your 30s. Or when you're age 30 or age 30 to 40, it'll start dropping into your 20s. And so you want to boost it up until like 40s and 50s typically.
Is the test that you do, so it's an at-home test, is it what type? Is it blood test or saliva?
They're finger stick blood tests.
Is there a brand that you recommend or a company that you recommend that we can put in the link to our show notes?
Most people use Ginfinity. There are other ones as well. That's one I've used.
Okay.
I haven't. Yeah.
I think it is, it's like you said, there's really from a safety perspective, it seems as if NMN is safe and the amount that someone's typically going to take is a non-issue in that. But you do want to just make sure that, if you're spending the money on it, you're taking the time, we're being consistent with this. There's so many other things that people are doing for wellness in their day that if we're going to add one more thing, let's see if it's something that we need. Just like we might look at what's my vitamin D levels or my omega-3 levels before we're making that decision to supplement. So I'll put the link to that. And I've actually haven't tested mine, so I'm interested to test
Really?
it. And so if we're doing let's say you're taking the NMN and it does have that, the effect, like say you supplement with it right now and it's going to boost our NAD. If for me, I'm like asking this question for me personally, would
Mhm.
I want to not take the NMN for a few days before I did the NAD test to sort of get a baseline? Like if you're supplementing with it, would it give a false high?
Yes, it will. So if you want your baseline, I would do a washout for 2 weeks. And so not take a supplement for 2 weeks. A week will probably be fine if you don't want to skip that many days. We typically, and for studies, you typically do 2 weeks. So if you want your baseline, you would need to, and then see, I would wait. I would supplement at 2 weeks, you can test again after
Okay.
supplementing again.
And then it seems like it could make sense that when you are going to supplement like that next time to do it maybe in that day before you're supplementing with your NMN. So it's not like immediately in your bloodstream as you're taking it. I don't know if
Yes,
that would affect it right then.
no, it can. So yeah, I
Okay.
would do it right before.
Okay. I think about like, if we have just like if someone is doing regular blood work and you take your B complex and your vitamin B12 can look really high. And some people, a lot of times someone comes to me, they're like, alarmed that this is really sky high. And it's just because they just took that B complex vitamin. So same thing, if you're going to measure your levels of NAD, do it first without taking any of the supplement, without taking NMN, which I would, stop taking mine for a week or 10 days and do it and kind of just get that baseline. Then after you're supplementing with NMN for a couple of weeks, take it. But if I'm taking it, say every morning, I'm taking that NMN, I would do my follow-up NAD test, my blood work before I'm taking that supplement. So they don't have that false high there. Um, I've read about some food sources of NMN, things like um, cabbage and cucumber, broccoli, tomato, mushrooms, raw beef, raw shrimp. It would seem that while there's food sources, it would seem that we would have to consume a lot of those foods to get the benefit of it. Is it worth even focusing on certain foods that are high in it, or is that kind of a drop in the bucket?
It's kind of a drop in the bucket. So the amount in foods is not going to be anywhere near what you would need to boost. So we're talking about, 250 to 500 milligrams. I think those are found in the tens of NMN and NR specifically. So you would have to consume more than is healthy of really any food to get an amount that might boost the level.
And we've talked a lot about NMN, but there's the other precursor to NAD is NR. So tell us about that.
Sure. So NR is also an NAD precursor. It's very similar to NAD, or excuse me, NMN, but they're both they're both the building block in line to build the NAD. So you think of NR, you add a phosphate to it, that's NMN. So they're just it's sequential steps. So there's a couple nuances between them, but for the most part, they're both effective. But they are both effective in clinical trials. And so the differences will just depend on the person. So if you want to test, you can, do one for 1 month and then switch to the other and see which you like better. But they will both be effective in boosting NAD.
Do you take both?
I do take both. Yes.
Okay.
So you can do one or the other, or you can take both. I will go for both because it looks like they both raise NAD levels, but they probably have their own unique effects that we haven't fully defined just yet. But it does look like there might be differences where they're preferred in different situations. So I do take both. Yeah.
And if someone's looking for, they're looking to supplement with NMN or with NR, of course, we'll link to Renew by Science. But beyond that, there's other companies that are offering this. One of the things that I read is that finding that good quality NMN, there's a few suppliers of it that are producing it, and it's not cheap, and so it's something that I would imagine because of that, there's a lot of products out there that are claiming to have levels of it that they're not. So what is something for someone to look, to be mindful of if they're looking for a brand? Of course, like I said, we'll link to Renew, but beyond that, just things for them to look at if it's a reliable, reputable brand or product.
I would say if there's a third party certification, and if they have that analysis posted or somewhere where you can see. So at Renew, we test every batch and we put that online, and we can send it to you if we haven't updated it quite yet. But they should have the testing for the contents for everything that is all of the ingredients listed should be tested for how much is in there and the quality to make sure there's not any heavy metal or anything in there. So as long as there's that analysis page, and you can always email a company and ask them for that analysis for that batch.
It's always a little suspect if they tell you no too, So if you email the company and you get kind of a dance around that answer,
Yeah.
that's kind of a red flag right there too. Is there anything that we haven't talked about related to NAD? And so again, going back to just for our listeners, like NAD it's what's in every cell in our body. It's what is really tied to healthy aging and that vitality and thriving that we see as that model, and that our expectations have changed as far as what aging is. Yet as we do age, our NAD levels are dropping, and that's where we start to see the negative impacts on glucose levels, cognitive effects, mental clarity, inflammation. So, looking at NAD is sort of okay, this is what we're trying to move the needle on. And then that NMN and the NR are what we call precursors that can help us move the needle on NAD. So is there anything else on these that we haven't covered that would be kind of a good takeaway for our listeners?
I think just being consistent with it, and to not get lost in the noise with everything. We talked about the different types of delivery systems, which can be beneficial. There's a lot of teams with NR versus NMN, and just trust what feels good for you. They're both going to be effective. And yeah, I think that's it, just consistency. So, and because there's always that underlying mechanism, which is, you can't always feel your DNA not being repaired properly. You can't always feel, the old cells not being cleared away as quickly. So that's a lot of the mechanisms with NAD. So it's the subtle stuff with aging that builds up over time. That's why it's important.
That's a really great way to say it. It's the subtle stuff. And I think so many times, we take something and we want to feel it right now. We want to feel like just the lights turned on and everything's going. But this is going to be really subtle, because I think that's the perfect way to say it. You don't feel your DNA aging. You don't feel those things happening on that cellular level. But sometimes kind of that fog or that sluggishness, that fatigue, or feeling like we just don't have, we're just not revved like what we are used to feeling like. All of those things, I would say, just try it. And it's something that, try it for 2 weeks, try it for a month, and see how you're feeling. For me, it's one of those things that I do it first thing in the morning. And typically I've had, I'll wake up and I have a cup of coffee first. I'll do this first, then I start to do all the other stuff around the house before, like while the coffee's making. And sometimes it might be an hour or more before I even pour that first cup of coffee. Yet I actually feel like that mental clarity is sort of kicking in, almost like I would feel with the coffee, but I don't feel the urgency to have that first cup of coffee so much right then.
Yeah.
And so for me, again, do we know for sure if it's working? I'm eager to do my NAD test and see, baseline and then doing it a few weeks in. And again, for all of us, there can be a level of placebo effect, which is also that in itself isn't a bad thing if we're taking something and then we're actually feeling better with it. But ultimately, I've continued to be consistent with it, to take this product for several years now. And I do feel, I mean, when I travel, I bring it with me, I pack it, I have like the smaller little containers that I'll divvy it into to make it easier to be portable. So I stay very consistent with it because I do feel that I feel that benefit from taking it. So, and the one that I take specifically is the NMN. I had originally done the liposomal gel, and then I switched to the powder. I felt like it was like a higher concentration or just doing it sublingually. But I think I may switch back or maybe do a version of both, maybe the gel in the morning and the powder in the afternoon or vice versa. I'll see. But we'll link to Renew by Science. And then is there any way if someone has questions for you that they can contact you?
Sure. You can put my email in the notes or anything like that.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. This was fun.
I'm so grateful to Dr. Rebecca Cruz for spending the time joining us today. And as we talked about, we'll include the links that we mentioned in the show notes of this episode. And always let me know what you think. If you try this product or some of the other strategies into your own life, I always want to hear about it. Of course, we want to mention, we're talking about NMN and related supplements that can help with cognition, that can help with, a whole array of detriments that can essentially happen as we age. And keep in mind that whatever the negative aspects you might be feeling, whether it's brain fog or otherwise, there's a variety of lifestyle factors and or medical conditions that can contribute to these things. It could be nutritional deficiencies, stress, overwork, lack of sleep, or even sleep apnea. There could be things like thyroid problems, depression, anxiety. There's so many things that could be contributing to this. So we don't want to assume that taking a singular product will help resolve or will be the magic fix that you're looking for. I think if you've listened to this podcast, you know that we're always emphasizing there is no singular magic fix. And we don't want to assume that that's something that is going to be an easy fix with taking a supplement. So when we're talking about supplements like these, keep in mind that these are to supplement an already healthy, wholesome lifestyle. So if you feel like you're doing everything or most things right and you're still kind of feeling like less than optimal, then yeah, give these a try. Always check with your physician before making any significant lifestyle changes. And of course, check with your physician to rule out or address any underlying health conditions. So if you are doing most of the right stuff, then yeah, give these a try. I am registered dietitian Molly Kimball, and you've been listening to Fueled Wellness and Nutrition, the podcast. If you'd like more Fueled Wellness and Nutrition, please head over to mollykimball.com. You can follow me, Molly Kimball RD, on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And if you haven't yet, please go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. And join us next time for another dose of Fueled Wellness and Nutrition. Thanks for listening, and stay focused on living your strongest, healthiest life.